Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I am your host, Allison Wiley. Joining me today, I am happy to be welcoming on Mike Allen. He is president, CEO, and co-founder of Quantum Realty Group, the parent company of Century 21 Jordan Lincoln Company, globally recognized as a top 25 Century 21 franchise. The company boasts nearly 400 agents across 10 offices in central San Joaquin Valley, California. He has been a speaker, trainer, and mentor to high-performing salespeople for over 20 years, giving over 1,000 presentations and training events in his combined career. He released his debut book with Forbes Publishing in 2024, titled The Quantum Real Estate Agent, The Blueprint for Developing Your Competitive Edge. Mike, welcome onto the show. I'm so happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Allison. It's a pleasure to be here. And after hearing my bio, I'm surprised I get any sleep at night. But
yes, quite an extensive and busy career in life. It sounds like you live, which we're going to be talking about today.
It's been a blessing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're going to share with us what you've learned throughout your transition. And I always like to start out the podcast by saying, how did you get started in real estate and what's led you to this path? And that's kind of a lot of your story is what's led you into real estate and all of that. So I think we could just dive right in. Tell us about your path to get started in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. And my path to real estate, honestly, was accidental. And I am a third generation real estate broker from Porterville. My grandfather was a real estate broker in the 50s and 60s. My father, after him, up through about 2006. And I vowed to never get into the family business. I don't like nepotism. I had a little bit of a black sheep syndrome. So I'm thinking I'm going to go out and make my way in corporate America, where I know when my paycheck's going to show up, what it's going to be. I know I have medical benefits. I know I have other perks. And I have that security of a large corporation making sure that all that happens. And so I did not follow in my dad's footsteps. And in fact, my dad said, Mike, don't ever get into real estate. Just keep doing what you're doing. And so after I graduated from Fresno State, I went and got a corporate job, a career with a lighting manufacturer out of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and started in the customer service marketing trainee program, and was very ambitious. Wanted to climb that corporate ladder up, and so I worked really hard and got notice and had some great successes early on. And 7 promotions later, and about 11 years later, I found myself as the director of national accounts based out of our headquarters in Greenville, South Carolina. And managed about $70 million in business, had about 30 people inside and outside in our department, and was just growing at a double-digit clip every year. And that was the good news. The bad news was I found myself single in a half-furnished, large, brand-new home I built that I was never at, and basically working 60, 70 hours a week. I was on the road flying somewhere about 60, 70% of the time. I would wake up, because I always stayed in Marriott Courtyards. I would wake up some mornings while I was traveling on business and not remember where I was at.
Wow.
Because all the Marriott Courtyards look the same. And so I just realized, man, I have to do a reality check here. Is this really what I want to be doing with my life? Granted, I've had some great success and have grown, but I have no personal life, no balance, no family around me. And is this what I want to keep doing? So in 2006, I was on a family trip in California, visiting my dad, my stepmother, and sisters. We were over in a small coastal town called Cayucas, Central California. And I was only coming to California at that point about maybe 3 times a year. And I happened to just be out during that time. And on that trip, which was a great day, we had a great day there in Cayucas, had a great dinner. But unfortunately, that night, my dad passed away from a heart attack, which was just earth shattering. He was only 53 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, what the heck? And, it was just obviously anybody that's ever been around a loved one that have witnessed them pass away, whether it's quickly or not, it's just the worst experience of your life. And so it really forced me to reflect on what am I doing with my life? Where do I want to be moving in the future, and what's important to me? And obviously, with the sudden passing, dad with no will or trust, surprisingly as many assets as he had built at that point, because he was very successful in real estate. He was doing 100 transactions a year with one assistant. I mean, he just an amazing salesperson, but no will or trust. I had to help my stepmother get through all that. And then he had a small brokerage where, he had about 6 agents. He was his own number one salesperson. Had an office space, and he had a office under construction in our hometown of Porterville, California. And so I had a decision to make. Do I keep doing what I'm doing, help as best as I can remotely, or do I dive into the family business and make a go at it and try to salvage everything? But by virtue of doing that, being closer to family again, and hopefully developing some kind of personal life and rekindling relationships that have kind of gone dormant over the years of being gone. And so with, I think, 60 days notice to my company, which was very tough on them. They didn't like to hear that notice. I gave them a notice that I was going to be leaving. And 60 days later, I packed up a truck and moved back to California, got there on a weekend. And that Monday morning, I walked into my dad's office with a briefcase, said hi to his assistant, sat down and started working, just as if I was still in my corporate job.
Wow.
And I had nothing to do other than work on my broker's license at that point. But that's how it started. It was not expected. It was not desired, but it was a personal life-changing decision that catapulted me into real estate.
Yeah, and you've kind of really been able to take it off from there. I mean, as we mentioned in the beginning, going through your bio, some of the successes you've had, and to not really being interested in it, or not seeing that as a path you were taking, to diving feet first in and really just making a fantastic career about it, I think is a really cool story. And thank you for sharing everything that you went through, and yes, the loss of a loved one. I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. It really, really is, as you said, the worst experience. But you've been able to really take what he built and keep that going, and what a testament that you've been able to do for your father. So I think that's really incredible and amazing. And I think, you have some good perspective to share with us today on just stuff that you witnessed, or maybe, coming from it from an outsider's perspective, or not really, seeing it as something that you were going to do. It's probably given you a unique take that maybe some other people haven't thought about or realized. And you mentioned kind of that risk, that happens when you take a job like real estate, no steady income, no health insurance, no all of that. Talk to us a little bit about, what people who are coming into this industry maybe should be aware of from that side of things, or kind of how you were able to navigate a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just having a healthy understanding of the decision you're making or the steps you're taking to most of the time transition from a day job or a W-2 job into the real estate profession. And I know a lot of people get into it after retirement. That's a little bit of a different scenario, but when you're moving from an area of financial security and knowing when your paycheck's going to show up, and really operating in a very structured environment where somebody's telling you when to show up, what to do during the day, and it's very task driven, moving into real estate is really an entrepreneurial endeavor. I mean, you are going from, in most cases, an employee or maybe a former employee, and you're becoming an entrepreneur. So I think realtors and agents have to understand that you are starting your own business. Even though you're going to work for a brokerage and hang your license under a real estate broker, nonetheless, you are going to be running and operating your own business. And there's financial risk that comes with that. And we really need to understand that it's a situation where we have to run our practice like a responsible business, which requires budgeting and understanding costs and reserves, and making sure that we're showing up. We are running it there, we're staffing it, And the beauty of the transition, if you take it serious and you show up and you work, is that before you were at a limit of what you made, and unless you're bonused, of course. But with real estate, it's unlimited. It's really transitioning from kind of a monotonous situation day in, day out to every day is different. I call every day in real estate like a snowflake. They're all different. And it's really a meritocracy. And the harder and really smarter and more efficient you work, the income continues to go up. And that's when I caught the bug, because I was scared to death before I got that first paycheck. And it took me about right under 4 months to close my first deal. But my first commission check was $11,000. And I was like, okay, I mean, if I could do, at least 10 to 15 more of these this year, I'll be okay, but it was amazing as I saw myself become more efficient, more deliberate, follow a schedule, how that formula continued to repeat. And then it became really just the business started flowing in much more consistently after that. So those are the things getting into it, people have to understand. You can't just get into it and hope. You can't get into it and work it part-time around, your personal trips and kids' games and things like that all the time. You really have to manage your schedule.
Yeah. And that schedule management is key, not even just in work and, setting business hours and making sure you're sticking to them, but also, that work-life balance, I think, is important. And that's something, you were sharing, you weren't having a lot of that in your previous job. And now how do you work that in with real estate? Talk to us a little bit about how you've handled creating that schedule, managing that perfect balance between making sure you're giving enough time and energy to work, but then also making sure you're having that work-life balance on the other side of things.
Yeah, back in my corporate job, the schedule was given to me and the expectation was there. And basically everything was planned around that. That really was the focus of my life. And if things didn't work or fit into that, they just didn't happen. And that's not healthy, obviously. And I think getting into real estate, it gives you the opportunity to plan holistically. So we're really looking at our schedules from the context of, okay, I have these things to do in my business today that are important, but I am also going to schedule in these personal things, which are probably equally or more important. And first and foremost, starting with self-care, which generally most of my real estate career, I've been really good about working out and diet, nutrition, and taking breaks and vacations. So when we go into scheduling, even from the beginning of your career, that schedule should factor in everything from the time you get up to the time you go to sleep. What does that look like? Make sure there's time prioritization. The myth of work-life balance is a myth. You're never going to have this perfect equilibrium on the scales where they're both equal. I mean, maybe very brief moments of your life or career that might happen. It's not about work-life balance. It's about work-life prioritization. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're going to prioritize business over things, and we may have to miss some important things, unfortunately, but we're also going to prioritize those important life events over work, and we're going to make sure that it all blends together and works for our business.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and you're so right. It's never going to be perfect. It's all about, what can you fit in a day that's going to kind of be the best scenario to make all of those things, feel like they're getting attention. So important. And yes, self-care too. I know this is, we're in high stress jobs and high stress scenarios a lot, crazy hours, working like crazy, and making sure we're taking care of ourselves and having that time to sit back and make sure we're the best person we could be. So important.
This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations.
As well. another thing that you talk about is making sure that you know your why and that you have this motivation that gets you through those tough days, that gets you through, those hard times, at times when you're maybe, I don't feel like it, or, I'm really weighed down today. And for you, you talk about that being your father and what he gave to the real estate industry and to your family. Talk to us a little bit about finding that. I know I hear from so many people like, well, what does that mean? How can I find that? Talk to us about how do we as agents find that out? How do we use that as a motivating factor? And how have you had success using your why?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. I think this is where it all starts and understanding what our big why is. And I was very blessed to come across an exercise right at the first year of my real estate career called the 5 Whys technique. So this has been around and was really created by Sakichi Toyoda, who was the founder of Toyota Motors, Toyota Cars or Industries today. And he came up with this 5 Whys technique of solving problems where you ask a question each time. You start with, well, why did you make that decision? I use it within the context of real estate, getting into it. Why did you make that decision to become a real estate agent? Okay, you give an answer. Most people would stop with that answer, and that would be their why, but that is not really their why. We got to dig deeper. So we need to re-ask that question 4 more times. Why did you want to do this? Why did you want to do that? Why did you want to do that? By the time we get to the 5th question, that becomes your big why. And I do have an exercise that I talk about in my book about that. When I went through that, it was really transformational. And a lot of people start with freedom and money and things that are more of a byproduct of really the true reasons of why they're getting into it. Once I went through the big why exercise, my result was I wanted to have a legacy and significant impact on helping as many people as possible succeed in life through real estate and beyond. And I saw real estate being one of the most important and biggest financial decisions most people will make in their lives, as being the catalyst to change lives. And to be a part of that, and in some cases, significant part of that, became my why. And once I established that big why, it's important to always have that in front of you, posted somewhere. It shouldn't just go into a drawer in your desk. It should be posted in front of you in your office, on your refrigerator at home. It should be shared for all to look at, your family first and foremost. But also when you go to do your business and life planning each year, that needs to be at the forefront of why you're doing what you're doing. And we, real estate, just like most careers, there's peaks and valleys, right? We've had a tough time with the economy and interest rates over the last couple of years. And so we've hit some valleys. So as you're trudging along and you have no sales in the pipeline, or, you haven't closed one in a while and the finances are getting tighter, go back and look at that big why. Why did I start this? Why am I doing this? Why is it so important for me to keep going in spite of all this adversity and some of these short-term failures? And this really sets you straight. It really gives you that higher purpose of why you are doing what you're doing and why it's important for you to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest motivating things you could do, as an agent, and you just described it so perfectly, is having that bigger picture. And, when those times are tough or you're having a rough day, just remembering, why you do what you do can give you such a refresh. And it's all part of that mentality, right? And I know that that's, a huge part of this too. If you're entering into a real estate career, or even if you're seasoned, in this job, is having that mindset and feeling confident. You talk about that imposter syndrome, right? That like feeling like, I don't know if, I could do it. Or I think that's a common struggle for a lot of us. And how are you able to kind of work out of that imposter syndrome and lead with that mindset that you're confident and that you're in the right place?
Yeah, and people should understand that most people have some form or degree of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Even though we convey this confidence in our lives and how we communicate on social media, I had only been in one career since I got out of college, and I became good at it and I was successful, but I was scared to death that I couldn't succeed in real estate sales because it was so different. And maybe I didn't have that ability that my dad or others had. And so I did question myself constantly, but how I really got through it was first I needed to understand and reminded myself anything that had been important up until that point, I've always gotten through and ultimately succeeded, despite short-term failures. And this was no different. I knew that if I could just do the right things, there's no magic pill, secret formula. It's very key things that you need to do in real estate sales. You just need to do them consistently, and you need to do them whether you have short-term success or not, because it's a business, it's a profession where you're planting seeds. And the more seeds you plant, they will germinate and reap results. So just having that calculated blind faith in the beginning to know that, look, I know I'm doing the right things. I've had a front row seat. I've watched my dad do it. I just have to have faith in myself that taking this work ethic that I transferred from my corporate job and in the commitment level to this real estate career, that it's going to reap no different result. And that's how I really got through it. And so everybody out there has value. Everybody out there is good at something, whether it's speaking, whether it's communicating, writing, whether it's just showing empathy, having that emotional intelligence or EQ. Take what you're good at and leverage that in your real estate business. And that will really gain you trust and credibility. And then the other stuff you can learn and improve on and become better at. So I think people going into it in their first year in particular with that in mind tend to do very well in their first year. And but it's a constant reminder of we are good enough, we have what it takes. Even up in the last 3 years, I've dealt with some imposter syndrome in spite of all the success, all the things I've done well. But I just keep going back and reminding myself that, look, I've succeeded. I do have value, and I am worthy to lead, almost 400 agents and help them succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think using that why can help fuel some of that too, right? If you're keeping that in mind and using that, as a way to get out of that negative self-talk. What have you seen in your career and your experience coming into this industry? What's been the biggest mistakes that you've seen agents make? Any mistakes that you've made that you know not to do again? What is some mistakes that you would say make sure to avoid or be aware of, or don't do this if you're starting out?
Yeah, number one, the most common mistake I see is a lot of agents start out with the best intent. They start out on a pretty good schedule because, hey, honestly, most brokerages of any quality and service will help you create a productive schedule in the beginning. Or if you get some kind of real estate coaching out there, there's plenty of great real estate coaching companies. But the most common mistake is I see that they start really aggressively, and they follow that schedule. They show up every day. They do try to prospect. They do try to get appointments, lead follow up, do digital marketing and all the right things that they should be doing. But then they don't get immediate results, so they stop or they slow down, and they gradually just stop showing up, and then they get distracted by the social element of the profession, and they start hanging out with the other low producers out there that tend to take 3-hour lunches every day. And a lot of those lunches are liquid lunches, right? So that's a big mistake because, again, like I said earlier, in the beginning, particularly as a brand new agent, I mean, if you do put a listing or opinion in your first month, it's not unheard of, but, you have to be patient. I mean, oftentimes it takes 4 to 6 months doing all the right things to get some momentum. You're planting those seeds. You have to be patient and let them germinate and grow, and don't stop. So that's probably the number one thing I've seen. The other thing that I see agents derail themselves over is just ego. They get caught up in their ego. They get defensive. They take things personally. And I had a little bit of trouble with this coming out of a successful corporate job. I had that mindset. Well, hey, don't tell me how things are done, and don't challenge me on this, or don't you know who I am, what I've done? I mean, those things go through your head, and when you're making decisions in business based on ego, it really becomes a self-sabotaging activity. We have to realize as realtors, we have a fiduciary to our clients. everything we do is for the benefit of our clients succeeding in buying and selling real estate. And we have to act in their best interest. And we don't make decisions for them, even though we may feel emotional about a decision or something that happens during the process or transaction. We can't really express our emotions in there. We have to act in the best interest of our clients. And when we do that, we're not chasing commissions. We're actually doing what our profession is and what we're hired to do, right? And I do see, agents letting their ego get in the way, chasing commissions and making decisions and how they conduct their business based on getting a closing because they want that check. So those are probably the top two things that I see that will derail agents early on or along the way.
Yeah, definitely. No, those are great things to keep in mind, and especially, entering this new world post NAR settlement. I mean, showing that value to our clients and making sure, that we are truly being that advocate and working for our clients in the best interest, I think is more important now almost than ever to make sure, hey, it's not about us. This is business. This is the personal. We got to put our feelings to the side and make sure that we are getting our clients through to their end goal. I think definitely very, very important. On the flip side of that, so we know some things to avoid or some things to watch out for. What's your biggest piece of advice or a few pieces of advice, or if you could give our realtors listening, something biggest takeaway, and we went through kind of your experience and some things you've learned and noticed throughout your time, but what's your biggest piece of advice or something that you want our agents to make sure they're staying aware about?
Yeah, I think number one out there, markets are strong. You have a lot of brokerages that emerge into the market. Technology has basically opened the door for a lot of online brokerages and portal-based brokerages. And so when agents are choosing to affiliate with a broker or brokerage, be very, very picky and scrutinizing about the models and whether it makes sense for you. And obviously, I'm a Century 21 brokerage. I'm not here to plug that as the end all be all. I will say that there isn't one size fits all brokerage. It depends on where you're at in your career. Obviously, if you're at the beginning of your career, you need a lot more support and training. You need a lot more infrastructure and potentially tools. And it's important to look at brokerages based on that value proposition, while others may be just more concerned about just having a place to hang their license with some support. But they've been in the business a long time and they're pretty proficient at it. So really look at what your needs are. I will say be cautious. An agent should never make a brokerage decision just because of the compensation plan. That's the worst decision you can make because obviously full service brokerages aren't as competitive on, the higher splits or 100% type plans out there. But I will say that it's about not what you're getting paid net per transaction. It's about the number of transactions you do each year and ultimately what you make in net at the end of the year. And so you will need to invest in your business in order to reap a result. I think a lot of agents' misconception is getting in real estate, it's almost a free business to get into. I don't have to spend any money or make any type of investment. And that's wrong. There is a capital investment initially, there's ongoing investment, but also you have to understand that if you work for a brokerage, the brokerage has a cost of providing those value items to you. And you just need to make sure that there's an ROI, a return on your investment for affiliating there. So that's one. I think going back again, just to reiterate about having just set business hours and a schedule. Having clients and the general public know when you're open and available for business is super important. And just getting back to people, answering your phone. I know it's hard to get anybody to answer the phone this day and age. Remember, I never didn't answer my phone. I used to take my phone into the shower because I would miss a listening opportunity if I didn't answer it sometimes. It's just crazy. But have set business hours, but also have set business hours communicated, meaning you will end your day at a specific point. The clients or prospective clients should know and honor that. Hey, if you call me after this time, I'll get back to you next business day, just so you know. And 99% of the clients out there will appreciate that. The other thing is it's just about just getting real with your business and understanding that a majority of the people that work in our industry and profession, it's not reality TV. Making all this money and we we have endless lunch dates, and we were hanging out at the country club,
And designer clothes and hair and makeup.
right, flashing our Louis Vuitton accessories.
Yeah.
Look, some, realtors are blessed to often be able to afford those things, but really it's about working hard and doing the right things. And I think, unfortunately, with reality TV, as entertaining as it is, and trust me, I've seen those shows out there, we've gotten a kind of a black eye from it. And I think we've got targeted unfairly in a lot of ways. You mentioned the lawsuits and settlements earlier, but the perception is that we're gouging and we're getting overpaid. The reality is, no, we're not. We earn what we do. And at the end of the day, it's through hard work, being diligent, doing the right things for our clients and getting them the desired result. And so agents need to understand there's just no magic pill to being successful in real estate. It's just hard work. And I just love the quote, and I reference it in my book. Opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work, which was Thomas Edison, right?
I love that.
There's just no fast track. I mean, we have to lay the foundation. We have to work relentlessly. We have to have that calculated blind faith in the beginning. And starting in this profession it can be daunting, but we just, it's all comes in the preparation and the consistency in the beginning, aligning with the right people, the right brokerage, and really, doing the right things and not stopping along the way. Just keep going forward, and you will succeed in this profession.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful way to kind of sum it up. I would like to grab your book information one more time for us. Tell us about where we can find it and a little bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the title of the book, again, is The Quantum Real Estate Agent. It's the blueprint for developing your competitive edge. I really tout it as the book I wish I had and could have read when I got into real estate. It was something that was missing, and I felt it was still missing up until I wrote and published it. It fills in all the blanks of just what we talked about today, a lot of the mindset stuff, just the principle stuff we should be doing, just how we conduct ourselves, getting past imposter syndrome. And it's based on 10 quantum principles that I had, some of them, that I had developed or discovered in my corporate job, but then I had to develop some others along the way to become better and more successful in real estate sales and then running brokerages. And so I feel that it's a really great book. It's gotten a lot of good critical acclaim. The sales have been good. I do feel it's a book that will help thousands of agents out there succeed. It should be a must read, either getting into this business or as a refresher or recharge on fine-tuning your existing practice. And it can be found on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and other websites that sell books.
Awesome. Definitely check that out. Lots of good stuff. We just scratched the surface on the knowledge that Mike has. So make sure to Google that when you hang up here. Mike, I have to thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing a little bit more of your knowledge and insights, and congratulations on an incredible career. And I know your father would be very, very proud.
Well, thank you, Allison. I appreciate that.
And to all of our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.